And then lastly, for the sake of this kind of introductory visual or demonstration, we're going to create one final common visualization, and that would be a GIS map. We'll do that next. So to begin with, we're going to create or open, sorry, a new worksheet. Once again, we're going to go up to the show me, and then we're going to quickly kind of view what do we need to make a map. So for symbol maps or shaded maps, either way, you're going to need a geo field, and you're going to need at least one measure. And you can add dimensions, similar to I did mention earlier, but even to the line charts and other visualization types, you see that there's 0 or more dimensions. You could certainly add more dimensions to any of these, but it's just saying in order to get started to create a visualization, you need at least in the case of maps, at least one geo field and one measure. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and we'll look. You could drag any of these. We got to identify, first of all, remember, the appropriate fields here. So we need a geo field. We've got 3 options here. We're going to be looking at postcodes, specifically level data. So let's go ahead and double click it. You could drag it and drop it, but I like to double click it for this reason. Well, double click or drag and drop into the viz area. And I'll show you. If you double click, it's going to automatically populate the map. If you drag it into that viz, same thing. But if you pull it over here, sometimes it'll do this sort of number here. So that would require you then just basically to select the viz, and then you would need to incorporate this generated information, the latitude and longitude. It's strictly up to you, whatever you prefer. I've just learned that it's a little bit quicker to double click or drag and drop into the viz pane area. So whatever approach you end up using, you should see this particular visualization to start. But we don't want a symbols map at this point because these are more or less boundaries in terms of postal codes. If we were plotting out specific cities in a state, for instance, the symbols might be more appropriate, but in this case, we want the shaded, what are called polygon maps. And so by selecting the shaded map, you see it changes from symbols or points to shaded area. So we've got that, that's good. And then at this point, let's say that we wanted to see the number of trees counted in each borough. It's a little bit trickier on a map, right? So we could begin, as we always have, right, by dragging and dropping the smaller tree census count. I'm going to double click it. And what's happened here almost by default is that it's, and maybe because I've done it before, but it's dropped it into the color marks card to create essentially a density map. And we're going to come back to that in a moment. But let's say, for instance, your instinct might instead be to take the tree name common and put that into the color marks card. And if you do that, then you're going to see something that looks like this. We're basically going to have a representation of all the different trees there, just based on whichever one is the most commonly occurring. And you can see also we have the null value, so we could remove that out. But again, because of the nature of a map, this is not particularly what we're interested in. This just shows the most common tree. Maybe you are interested in the most common tree per postal code, but let's say you're not. That's not going to be particularly helpful in terms of a map itself. So let's go ahead and click that field or that pill and drag it out into this open area to remove it. Let's say next you might be interested in I don't know, other approaches. Well, if you wanted to see, I suppose, same kind of thing, the different variables here, we could put it by health. And this is going to help you kind of quickly highlight the most common health status of the tree. And many of those are null. So clearly, if we wanted to do that, we could take out the null filter, and that would help. So most of the trees in these areas here are in fair health. This might be helpful if you're trying to identify some issues, for instance, if these areas or these particular postal codes have more trees in poor health than other health types. So that could be a reason to investigate those particular areas, for instance. Once more, though, this is not what we're looking for. So we're going to drag that out into this gray area, the health pill, and then go back to what was sort of the default. We're going to go back to the trusty smaller tree census data and drag it to the color marks card. And then that's going to give us essentially a density map. So this is counting all of the trees per postal code at this point. You see we have a nice auto-generated, more or less legend up here with the lighter the color representing the fewer trees, all the way up to this really dark blue, which is a maximum of 106. At this point, we can hover over and see the various counts. So that's great. Like all the others, we could obviously add the labels if we wanted to, although I don't think it's necessary on a map. It does kind of tend to clutter, because one thing with the map is you don't want to have too much information. So we'll go ahead and undo that. And we'll leave it like this at this point. So we've got essentially a tree density map, and that's what we're going to call it. We're going to rename that tab tree density map.